What's going on? Welcome back to the Blue Stable Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening to, by the way, if you want to help us out, please like and subscribe to the Blue Stable on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. We really appreciate it. And make sure you stick around for always some good shows weekly, and training camps coming up, OTAs are coming up. Always stay tuned for that stuff. Landon, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. OTAs have actually started this week, so they've been going on since Tuesday. The media was finally able to check it out today for the first time, so we sure there'll be some great content, some great stories coming from OTAs, and all that. We got some stuff to talk about from it as well. But yeah, overall, doing great. Ready for another fun-filled show with you. Missing my boy Marcus. Missing
Yeah.
so he's having some technical difficulties on his end. But me and Mike here, gracing you with our presence, ready to talk some Colts.
Yeah, man, Marcus is definitely missed. I mean, he'll be back. I might not even be on the show next week because I'm going to be in the middle of moving, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be here. But we're definitely going to make the effort as long as the internet gets installed on time.
Fortunately, y'all always got my ugly mug to stare at. So
right. Well, man, part of OTAs, Michael Pittman was absent from there, but nothing contract related, no drama going on. I never expect any drama from Michael Pittman Jr. He missed because him and Kiana Pittman are having, I believe, their second child. So congratulations to the lovely couple, man. I subscribe to them on YouTube, man. They are a fun couple to follow, to interact with, man. They're fun. I first caught wind of them when Michael was in the draft process, and so he did like a draft, like a what is it, like a draft thing? He threw his girlfriend in, and it was fun, man. Y'all go check it out. But shout out to Michael Pittman, a father of two now, also as his lovely wife Kiana. But let's go ahead and talk about this. Isn't the Michael and Kiana podcast? This is the Blue Stable podcast.
The Michael and Landon podcast.
Right. The wrong Michael, right? But man, we got some good, exciting stuff to talk about, man. As mandatory minicamp approaches June 13th through the 15th, that's going to be definitely interesting to see where the team is at that point. And then training camp is coming up closer and closer day by day. It's getting here, but there's some exciting things going on. But on this episode, guys, we're going to talk about some guys that really need a bounce back year, and maybe the Colts kind of need them to have a bounce back year, especially if they want to try and go and, try and compete and protect their rookie quarterback. So let's go ahead and hop into it, man. Before we do all that, make sure you always like this show wherever you're watching, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. Make sure you drop a comment in the comment section. We'll be highlighting those on the show here going forward. So the first one, man, Landon, this is a guy that we're going to go ahead and start off the show with, right? We're going to go with Shaquille Leonard, Darius Leonard, whatever you want to call him. He's fine with both. Shaquille Leonard, man, he needs a bounce back year. He needs one, and it might even be out of his hands, honestly, because of the seriousness of the nature of his injury and his situation. I feel comfortable in saying that it is out of his hands. Like when it comes to a nerve issue, and we've talked about it on the show, man, it could last 3 days. It could last 3 years. Like it just varies with those nerves, man. I'm not entirely sure where our medical research is on nerves. They're all different. They react differently. But Darius Leonard needs to get on the field. But of course, we want him to just get healthy first off. Like, be fine, be normal, get back to being Shaq, get back to being the hype, energetic. We always love his energy he brings to the camera before going out to practice, right? Be that guy before you get there. Now, we want to preface that as well. Don't push him out just for the sake of pushing him out. But Len, I want to get your thoughts first on Shaq, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, he's the engine that drives this defense and really drives the locker room and the team. I mean, we know how much he means to this franchise and what he brings to the table not even just on the field, but off the field. So having him back, I know he was out there today. Obviously, he wasn't practicing or anything, but he has been present in the building, which is always a positive thing. Everything we've heard seems, which obviously take it all with a grain of salt. We know how the Colts, the past has been with injuries, but and them kind of letting people know up front what the business is. But everything seems to be trending in the right direction as far as him, getting back out there sometime this year. I don't know if it'll be necessarily, beginning of the season. Nobody knows right now. And that's just kind of where we're at with it. But as far as, once he does get out there on the field, yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those things where he's had some time off now. We obviously saw him struggle through playing last year, in the limited time that he did get on the field, and he just wasn't the same guy. And that's not his fault. It's just like you said, the nature of the injury. But we do know that when it comes to Shaq Leonard, man, like nobody's going to work harder. Nobody's going to push themselves to be out there and to be the impactful player. I mean, even when he was out on the field last year, he struggled, but he still, got out there first game, like interception, turnover. Like he's always going to put himself in the right spot. And the ball just has a natural way of finding its way into his hands. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a turnover machine, man. So shout out to Drake. Hope you're doing well, man. But yeah, so it's going to be one of those things that it's just going to take time. It's just, you're not going to know until you know. And until we actually see him out on the field performing, then you have to assume you are where you are with him.
Yeah, I want to add another layer to this as well, because you need a veteran like him. And at this point, he's a veteran. He's played a lot of football, made a lot of plays, seen all kinds of offenses in this league. So having his presence on this defense, especially a defense that is young, a defense that's bringing on 7 to 8 rookies to this side of the defense, without even mentioning possible UDFAs that are going to make this roster, right? Without even mentioning those, you need a presence in that locker room to let the guys know, hey man, y'all are young. When y'all make mistakes, don't get too down on yourselves, because if these young guys get down on themselves, man, it could be a bad defensive year for Indianapolis, especially at the corner position. We know how vital that position is, and we'll touch on the corner position here in a little bit, but just a guy like that to keep you engaged, to keep you upbeat in the locker room, on the field, on the sideline, means so much to these guys. And if he's not out there, not only helping these guys develop, encouraging them, but also not on the field making plays, it starts to add a little bit. If worst case scenario, we don't know if this will happen. We don't. Worst case scenario, if he doesn't play at all this year, there's got to be major questions. There has to be. Now, again, it's a nerve. This is probably a question you have to ask Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen if in December Shaq hasn't played a game. This is probably a better question to bring up because they'll have more information than we do. But if you get to that stage and he's still not suited up, man, I mean, you've invested $19-20 million annually into the guy. That matters. Now, yes, it's his money. He's getting paid. It's not my money. But just talking about where your investments are going and what your return on your investment is, you're not getting anything much in return, and you didn't get much last year. So he was still dealing with the injury, didn't get much last year. I believe he got into the Tennessee game and got an interception, but I mean, the ball was thrown literally right to him. So credit to him for catching it, but getting beat on the outside, not sticking with his coverage, it's hampered a little bit. So it needs to, I think he is in need for a bounce back year, not just for the Colts, but for Shaq himself, honestly, because that's where I think so, because he is his happiest, and he spoke about it. He is on record, man. He is happy when he's playing ball, and when he's not, he was on record this past season talking with Zach Kiefer and Stephen Holder and on ESPN and stuff. He's been in dark places at these times, and of course, when it comes to mental health and your happiness. We want him to be at the utmost when it comes to that. So we're not trying to, foresee anything. But man, for him, I think it's a big year if he can get on the field.
Yeah, definitely. And like the thing with him though, like even like you were saying, like even whenever he's not out on the field, man, doing great, DJ.
Doing great, DJ.
Yeah, hope you're doing great as well, man. Um, Thanks for joining us, by the way. Whenever it comes to Shaq, man, like even when he's not out on the field, like he's gonna be present in that building, he's gonna be present in that locker room, help building these young guys up, help building, this defense and really just the whole team in general. Like not even just on the defensive side of the ball. Like he means so much to the franchise itself. So he'll be present. But yeah, you do worry about how it affects him mentally. It's a tough situation he's dealing with, man. And what sucks is, like you said, man, it's out of his control, and that's the hardest part about all this. Is you go through these type of situations where when we saw it, not to bring up bad memories or anything, but we saw it with Andrew Luck with, like he said, like you know injury rehab, injury rehab, injury rehab, and it can take a toll on you. So him being able to navigate his way through that, and hopefully, and I fully expect him. I do expect him to um, play this year. So I don't think he's going to miss the whole season. Maybe the beginning because if we've heard even now from like other people that he's already in a better spot this year than he was last year with the injury. He's moving well. He's been training well. So, but there's a difference between training and being in football shape and being out on the
Mm-hmm.
field. So until he's getting those live reps with contact, it might take some time. But I'm never going to bet against a guy like that. I've said it multiple times on this show. Like if there's one player probably on that entire roster I'm not going to bet against, it's Shaq Leonard. So we're just in wait and see mode for him. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely does seem like until he's out there playing, like everybody's going to have those questions.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And this is something that has followed him since his second year in the NFL, since 2019.
Mhm.
He
Yeah.
sustained this injury and it's followed him. And you do get into some murky waters like with the Andrew Luck situation. And it's been, has he even himself reached out to Andrew Luck? Now, I don't want to like start speculating or anything.
Yeah.
We know T.Y. Hilton did that because he spoke about it, right? He was open about it. So those are just things. This is like me just thinking out loud, really. So let's go ahead and move on here with Quentin Nelson. Yes, Quentin Nelson, arguably the best guard in football, arguably the best lineman in football. So Quentin Nelson, why is he on this list, Landon? Well, let's talk about it, okay? Quentin Nelson, why? How could he be on this list? Big Q, 5'6". How is he? Because he hasn't been playing like Quentin Nelson. That's why. And it's also involved sometimes. You saw last year, there's multiple plays where Quentin Nelson's not getting his push at the line of scrimmage. So the run game is hurting. Matt Ryan is getting sacked. Matt Ryan's getting hit multiple times, even though most of that was on Matt Pryor, Dennis Kelly, and all those other guys. So for Quentin, man, this is why I believe, and I'm gonna offer this this view. This is why he needs a bounce back year, because you have a rookie quarterback. That's the obvious, right? But
Right.
also, if your rookie quarterback is struggling, he's got to be able to rely. And this is what I spoke about earlier in the offseason when it came to running backs. You are relying on 5 guys, mainly the 3 interior guys, to do their job, to get the run game going, right? You need those guys to do their job. So Anthony Richardson needs Jonathan Taylor to lean on. Jonathan Taylor needs Quentin Nelson to lean on. And another guy we're going to talk about right after Quentin Nelson. So in regards to just pure protection, protecting the quarterback and making sure the run game is getting going, because we've seen Jonathan Taylor when the run game is going, and it's great. It's amazing. Number 1 in fantasy. That's why I think Quentin Nelson needs to have a bounce back year. Quite simple, honestly, with Big Q.
Yeah, and like the big thing with Q also, like it's not even necessarily that he's been bad. Because I don't think he's been bad at all, especially as the season went on last year. He got better. But you look at the contract, and I think like that's kind of the big thing with him is like you're sure he might be whenever he's not playing well, he might be the ninth or the eighth best guard in football. But you're not being paid like the ninth or the eighth best guard in football, man. You're getting paid like you're the one. Like you're head and shoulders above everybody else. And until he performs at the level of that contract, I think that's kind of where it is. And I know he's another guy he's kind of dealt with injuries here the last couple seasons, dealing with off-season surgeries. I believe this year was actually the first off-season that he hasn't had surgery in like the last 2 seasons. And there were some back issues as well, which I think we did see that kind of zap what made him special, like as far as like not only just the way he plays, the physicality, the play strength, but the speed with which he plays as well. Like, I mean, the guy's an absolute freak. And whenever you're a step slower than what your mind is, I think that can kind of hamper you a little bit. And I think you kind of saw that. Like, we never really saw Quentin Nelson get bullied. Like there were a couple plays over the last few years where like we've seen him get put on his ass, and that's not really something you ever did see with him his first few years in the league. So, but I think having a healthy offseason, another year removed from those surgeries, getting that play strength back up to where he is normally, getting that athleticism back to where he is normally. He's a guy that, like I said, you're going to be relying on not to be the eighth best guard in football. You're going to be relying on him to be the anchor of your offensive line, to be the best guard in football, to be that Hall of Fame caliber player. And it's just something that you need to see on the field because you didn't see it last year.
Yeah, I mean he's a left guard being paid like a number one wide receiver. That's basically the name of the game with him. And even to your point, when it comes to maybe he was a step slower and just the play in tack. One thing that needs to be mentioned is how much strain you put on your back when you're trying to maintain pad level as a guard. And that's something that you saw. Initially, he was in position, and then he just can't, they try to swing around. He can't stay with them. And you saw that so much on tape already. And that's one of the reasons, and that's a great thing that you mentioned, that this offseason finally is something that he can just get in the gym, work, get back with the trainer, start working on some more agility, more pad level exercise or pad level drills, and just get back to who Q is. Because when Q is on his game, that means Anthony Richardson is not seeing too much pressure from the inside, and Jonathan Taylor is running wild. That's usually what it leads to. So that's what we're going to say about Quentin Nelson, unless you have anything else to add on to that, Landon.
No, and I think another good thing with him is like it, and I think this goes to the addition as well as some of the things we've heard about Tony Sperano Jr.
DJ says Quentin Nelson has struggled recently, and there are questions to why he did. I believe it was the rotation of quarterbacks and also the new additions in the offensive line could have affected his performance. Maybe.
Yeah,
Obviously.
Continuity is a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Like continuity is a huge thing for an offensive line, and I do agree that him and like the guy we're about to talk about as well, like some of that did affect them because you're constantly like if you're having to cover for the guy next to you because you're worried that he can't do his job properly, then you're thinking for two guys and have one. So that's something that will help him as well. And then, like I said, he's on his path to being healthy finally for a full off season, getting back to normal. But I think the addition of Tony Sperano Jr. as well, I think that's going to be a big thing for that room, just because we've heard about the accountability that he has. Like he doesn't let anything slide in that room. And I think that's something that was kind of lacking, the last few years there. And we really kind of saw this offensive line just kind of disintegrate more and more and more. And it seems like, it kind of just hit his head last year, with the Nick Foles thing where, they played that game and they watched Nick Foles get tackled, take a late hit, and everybody just kind of stood around and watched. Like, a couple years ago, like we would have seen Q, like he would have been on that dude. And so I think like dealing with what he's kind of dealt with physicality wise, I think it's just kind of he lost a little bit of that edge. And I think having a guy like Tony Sperano Jr., who's like, I don't care if you're Quentin Nelson, I don't care if you're the greatest guard of all time, like having a guy that's willing to call you out for your mistakes and to help you maintain that edge, I think is a big thing in that room. So I'm definitely looking for a big bounce back. And like I said, this is a guy that didn't play bad last year. I mean, he's still like one of the
Mm,
best guards in football, like top 10 guard in football. But really, whenever you're looking at the value of what you're getting back for that contract, you're not getting paid like the eighth best guard. You're getting paid, you're getting paid to be the one. So we got to get you back to be in that Hall of Fame, surefire number, best offensive lineman in football. That's what we're
yeah.
looking for.
And having to overcompensate because remember, Matt Pryor starting the season out at left tackle, getting beat left and right, couldn't pick up stunts. Quentin Nelson has to overcompensate. He's letting his man by to help out Matt Pryor. And he also had to help out Ryan Kelly, who is next on our list on the offensive line. Now, having two offensive linemen who need bounce back years isn't ideal when you have a rookie quarterback, but it's not unheard of. It's not usually sometimes it lines up because look, you finished with the number 4 overall pick for a reason, right? So with Ryan Kelly, man, let's talk about it. Ryan Kelly, his situation is more murkier than Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson is basically straight to the point business. With Ryan Kelly, man, me personally, I've seen a decline the last 3 years. I've seen a decline the last 3 years, man. He's been battling injuries. He battled something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, which we don't have to bring up. So that when he returned in 2021, I don't really acknowledge that because I don't expect anybody to play like a Pro Bowler during that time. So that end of 2021 isn't really in my evaluation for him. But with Ryan Kelly, man, he at times when Danny Pinter stepped in last year, he stepped in the Denver game on Thursday night. Ryan Kelly came out of the game. Danny Pinter stepped in, and all of a sudden, no pressure up the middle unless it was Matt Pryor getting beat. So Danny Pinter stepped in, outplayed Ryan Kelly every single time he subbed in for him. Every single time. I did not think Ryan Kelly was a better center than Danny Pinter in 2022, maybe even in 2023. Back in 2020, you remember Ryan Kelly was out for the Green Bay game against Aaron Rodgers. That's when we still had Phillip Rivers. Danny Pinter comes in, starts that game, and he had a really good game, man, at center, and that's his natural position. Part of the reason why when we had our playing GM series, I had Ryan Kelly as a cut because, I mean, you're paying more for lesser play from Kelly, and you're still having Danny Pinter on a rookie contract, paying him what? He was a 4th, 5th round pick, so he's getting paid maybe $700,000, maybe. You're just paying less, substantially less. And again, kind of like Q, you're paying for a certain amount, but you're not really getting much in return. We have seen Ryan Kelly at a Pro Bowl level. We have seen him at his best, and he hasn't been there the last 3 years. He is getting beat. He's getting mauled. He is getting manhandled. He's not getting to the second level well. He's not maintaining pad level. He's not keeping contained. Nothing. And the run game, obviously, when we talked about Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, they're side by side. The run game suffered from that. He couldn't get any push against anyone he faced. So it goes to show that I think out of everybody on this list, this is the guy that needs to bounce back the most because he's in a contract year, and Lord knows if Chris Ballard is gonna re-sign him.
Yeah, so he's got this year left, and then he does have 2024.
Oh, so even more reason, yeah.
Yeah, so he's got one more year after this season on his contract. But I think with Ryan Kelly, I think he's the one that was most affected with the change along the offensive line. Especially playing next to the right guard position, which is still kind of a question mark on this roster at the moment. Like, I don't understand, which I mean, it's still early, so we'll see what happens as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, he had to compensate a lot. And I think his issue not necessarily hasn't been injury or physical or anything like that. But I mean, I really do think with the situation that he dealt with uh, there a couple years ago, like it's a really tough mental situation that he's dealt with. And I think that's really put a strain on him playing football. I think like it affected, that can really send you down a dark path. I mean, I've had friends that have kind of dealt with a similar situation, and it's still like tough on them, and it's not something you ever really get past. You learn to live with it, but you don't ever really get over it. But I think as time moves on, I think it's something that he'll learn. They learn to live with, as opposed to, just letting it consume you. And that's just something that you really hope. I mean, I feel for the guy, like just like in my heart, like I feel for him and his wife. I couldn't imagine what they've dealt with. And I think that was really the main thing with him, was just more mental, like not only having to deal with that off the field, but then getting on the field and having a guy next to you that you don't trust. And we know trust along the offensive line and the ability to basically have five guys working as one. Whenever you have constant turnover at that position, and we saw it multiple times last year, like it's hard if you don't have that continuity. And this year having more, I guess, more of a clearer picture of where things are headed. We know Bernard Ryman's likely going to be the left tackle. He played well in spots. That kind of solidifies Quentin Nelson. Ryan Kelly, we've seen him. And so the big question mark is right guard. And we know Smith is going to be right tackle. So, and I mean, like they also drafted some guys as well. So we saw Blake Freeland even today in OTAs with Braden Smith out playing the right tackle position. So if they like where he's at and he's playing at a really good level in camp, and you trust him, and like you possibly kick Braden Smith over into right guard, that could really like if Blake Freeland ends up being a really good tackle prospect, especially at right tackle, you can kick Braden inside, then like you could really solidify this offensive line. And Braden Smith is a guy that Ryan Kelly's played a lot of football with. So you're going to have that trust. Braden Smith's going to do his job. Quentin Nelson's going to do his job. And you also trust your quarterback to deal with pressure, because I think that's another big thing along with this offensive line, is having a quarterback that can navigate the pocket, can escape, is mobile. Is it time for Pinter? I think Pinter is I don't know if necessarily I would start him. I think he's a really good spot starter if you need him, but I don't know if I feel comfortable rolling him out for an entire season, like a season long thing. But if it's for, I would much rather prefer Ryan Kelly. And he's another guy, like he started off slow, but I think you saw kind of as the year went on last year, you really kind of saw him pick it up. You saw his play pick up. You saw the offensive line play pick up just in general as the season went on last year. And, while they weren't this dominant, top 5 unit that they have been in the past, since 2018, they weren't just this absolute just disaster class that we saw early on. Towards the end of the season, they really played well. Ryan Kelly played well as well. So I think, as time goes on with those wounds to heal mentally, with more trust in the guys next to you, and this offseason is going to be big in building that. Another thing, like I talked about with Nelson too, that that addition of Tony Sperano Jr., like he's not going to let stuff slide. So I think this is a big year for Ryan Kelly. And also too, like I think a big thing with him was him questioning what his role was in this team moving forward. And I think he had those question marks last year, and him having that conversation with Shane Steichen. He was one of the first guys that Shane Steichen reached out to and talked to. And Shane Steichen told him what he meant to this roster and what he meant to this offense and this team. And I think that's a big thing for a player to know, like, hey, if you don't know what your future is with a team and you don't know where you're at with somebody, like that can really eat at you as well. So having Shane Steichen reach out to him and make him a priority, I think that's a big thing for a player like that. And I think that really sets a precedent of like, okay, they believe in me. They still want me to be a key piece in this offense. As we move forward, that's something that'll help him as well. So I do expect a bounce back just for the offensive line in general, not even just those two guys. I think going forward, this offensive line with the additions that they added in the draft, with the possible free agents that are still available, if you don't trust that,
Still available.
yeah, there's still a lot of really decent impact players at the guard position, and we haven't even made cuts yet. So you never know who's going to be available to bring in, but I think the bounce back is one of the key things that I'm looking forward to for this offensive line. And then obviously having Anthony Richardson back there, a guy that can navigate pressure as well as any quarterback in this draft. And the pocket presence and the mobility and all that, like that's just going to make your life a lot easier as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Ryan Kelly.
Yeah, it's interesting because it sounds like Will Fries, Tony Sperano has some high praise for Will Fries. And, we've already seen him at right guard and, it can be better. And, hey, maybe a year having some of those up and downs and having an offseason to work on that. Hey, maybe he bounces back. Maybe he bounces back this year. So it's remained to be seen. We'll talk about it at another time, but Nelson, Kelly, and Smith on the inside, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money on the inside. But, hey, I'm not the one running the team. So next one.
Like the thing with that though, before we do move on, is like whenever you're paying a rookie quarterback, but then you're also paying your tackles, or specifically your left tackle, and some of those other guys along that offensive line, you're paying them kind of pennies on the dollar. Then it's not necessarily, it all kind of like evens out, in the end, as far as like what you're paying your offensive linemen. So, and Will Fries is another guy like. I think as he focuses more on like his anchor, his play strength, that was kind of a big issue. But I think as he goes through just developing, I think he could be a guy that also benefits from a full off season. If he is able to get that weight up, get that, and we heard from Bernard Ryman, like he's added like 15 pounds, I think. So he's pushing dang near 330 now. And if he maintained that athleticism, like his play strength, that was really one of the only negatives for Bernard Ryman. It was just, his inability to hold his anchor and just his play strength. So if Will Fries follows that path, if he's gained some muscle, if he's able to play with, more strength and able to handle those bull rushes and stuff like that, there definitely is something there that can happen. So I agree, Wyatt, for sure. So I think Tony Sperano Jr. is going to be a big addition to that. Like we don't know what it's going to look like as far as X's and O's go yet, just because we haven't seen it on the field, but everything you've heard coming out of that franchise about the accountability that he holds and how detailed and prepared he is in those meetings, and just the way that he doesn't let anything slide. Like if you have a mistake, like you're going to do it until you get it right. And I think that's going to be a big piece of this offensive line's bounce back. And if he is going to operate like that, and if he can translate that to the field with this offensive line group as well, if that those details and the preparation and the accountability transfers over, then yeah, I think this could still, like, there's still a lot of talent along this offensive line to work with.
For sure. And moving on here, we got to talk about everybody's favorite. I got to put him on this one. We were talking about him a little bit before landing, but I got to put him on this one. Everyone's favorite, Mo Alley-Cox.
Dang, you hit him with the crow? Man, that's brutal.
Basically, that's a increment of what his stat line was last year. So, man, let's talk about it. Now, for real, okay? I'm not trying to be the troll. Like I know, I guess that's what my reputation for Mo Alley-Cox is. But let's actually dig into the football side of this without trying to do any trolling. That's my only trolling for. Well, hold on. Okay, I had to get one more out of me. But getting into the actual football side of things, man. Look, I was never really high on Mo Alley-Cox. I know he was like kind of a potential type tight end. Personally, I just didn't see it. I didn't think it was going to work. Then he becomes a free agent for some reason in a loaded free agent tight end class. Chris Ballard paid Mo Alley-Cox 3 years, $18 million. Now, kudos to him. He getting paid. He getting money. Awesome. His reputation was being a blocker, and he was a solid blocker. He was a good blocker. Jack Doyle was here. He was the number one. Mo Alley-Cox was being the number two, really sticking to that blocking role. But then he gets thrusted after this new contract, gets thrusted into the number one spot, which already I didn't like. I'm not sure how. Landon, how did you feel about that? Just speaking on that, you saw the tight end class. Chris Ballard ignores that, goes back and gets Mo Ali Cox. He's your tight end one. Just speaking on that, what did you think? How did you feel about that one?
Yeah. Well, I don't think like Ballard necessarily ignored it. Because he drafted Jelani Woods, he drafted Drew Ogletree. They had Colin Granson going into year 2. So it became more of like a tight end room, like by commit, like tight end one by committee. Like you have guys that excel at different things. So but he was being paid, to be the number one on this roster. And we have seen him excel in a limited role, on this team. Like he's graded out very well. And whenever he did have the ability to get the ball in space, get the ball in the red zone, obviously as a blocker, excuse me. So I mean, I understand the process because like you don't pay guys for what they've done. You pay guys for what you think they're gonna do. And unfortunately, he just hasn't lived up to that. And that's just the way it goes. Yeah, and I mean, even this year, they added a tight end, so they've drafted 4 tight ends in the last 3 years. So I mean, they're obviously not satisfied with that group. They
also signed Pharoah Brown as a free agent.
Yeah, Pharaoh Brown is here. They just signed another tight end a couple days ago as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And I think that's really what they're doing is like they're just letting the competition shake out. And I think to me, like I think Colin Granson and Jelani Woods have secured their spots on this roster. Like I think both of those guys are easily safe.
Easily for Colin Granson?
I do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I do. I think he's easily like the best route runner, the most explosive athlete of this group. As far as like as a separator, his ability to get separation along
route runner, I agree.
Yeah. Like I think like he will end up playing a big role in this offense that maybe not a lot of people think. Like I think everybody's really like kind of eyeing Jelani Woods, but I think a lot of people have forgot just how like good Colin Granson was last year. Like he made a lot of plays, especially like he's a guy that you can line up in the slot, running those drag routes, run on those tight end screens, that Shane Steichen loved to throw last year in Philadelphia. He can, I mean, I really, really like Colin Granson a lot. I think he has a lot of good qualities to him in a tight end room. And Jelani Woods, obviously, we know the athletic freak he is. Drew Ogletree, we'll see what happens coming back. And then drafting Will Mallory as well. He's another guy like he can stretch the field, very explosive athlete. So, but they really need Mo Ali Cox if he does end up making this roster. Like they still need a guy that can block. I mean, that's just such a crucial role for this team. And Pharaoh Brown, while he, a couple years ago, he had a really good season as a blocker. Like he kind of struggled a little bit last year in a bigger role, kind of similar to Mo Ali Cox, where both guys, they played well in spurts and limited roles, but whenever they got that main guy role to be that main blocker, I mean, they struggled a little bit. So I think it's more of a competition between those guys to see like, okay, we really need a guy to step up and be that guy we can throw in those running situations. And Mo Ali Cox, he's got the talent. I mean, he's got the body, he's got the size, the arm length. I mean, like he has all the tools. You haven't seen him put it all together yet, and that's really what you're hoping for. This is another thing with bringing in a new tight end coach as well. We'll see how that translates to the field, but there's a lot of competition in that tight end room. So he's going to have to show out this off season. Like his spot is not safe at all. And he's going to have to really put in the work and show them the improvements that he can be that every down Jack Doyle type where he can move the chains, be a good target in the red zone, but really make an impact as a blocker. And that's something that he has excelled at in the past. But whenever he was given the keys to the car, he kind of wrecked it a little bit. So, we'll see what happens. But that's just kind of my Cox.
He wrecked it for sure.
I understood where Chris Ballard was going with that because, like I said, he played really well in spurts, and you're paying for guys for what you think they can do. He graded out really well, so I don't hate the contract. It's not like it's not like he rolled out 15 million a year for the guy. So
I mean, 9 million is still a really good number for a tight end. Let's be honest here. Like you're in that tier. You're in that third, second tier of tight ends when you're getting paid that money. Now, with the talent does not match up with the investment. That's just one thing of putting it. The talent, or the production rather, does not equal the investment. Let's rather say that, because Mo Cox is in the NFL. He's got talent,
yeah,
but
but I mean, like
the
he's only
production does not meet
his
the
cap hit's
investment.
only $5 million. He's only, I mean, so he's actually only making $4.8 million this year.
But still, the fact that he was paid to be the number one guy, and then you got outshined by a rookie, and we all know how tough it is for rookies to produce and shine in their rookie year, let alone their second.
Especially
A tight end, yeah, absolutely. And Jelani Woods, for whatever reason, man, whether if it was Frank Reich or Jeff Saturday, I don't know why Jelani Woods was not getting more targets.
Well,
I don't know why.
Yeah, as far as targets go, I know he did kind of struggle as a blocker, so it was hard. It was really hard to put him on the field and take Mo Cox off, because they're even as bad as Mo Cox was last year, there still was like a downgrade, and like he's still kind of learning that position as well. Like, let's not forget, like he's only played tight end for just a few years. Like he came into college as a quarterback. So it's kind of the same thing with Will Mallory. Like like a lot of these guys have only played tight end for just a few years. So you're drafting for these athletic traits. So
with Mo, man, he's got to step up. If anything, I mean, the pass catching part. I mean, man, I left that ship like 3 years ago. I knew he didn't have it. When it comes to the blocking, though, he's got to step it up, because technically you do need a blocker. You always want a good blocking tight end. Jelani Woods, you take the receiving stuff. You take on that stuff with your height, your agility, your route running, and your speed. You take on that shoulder, that load. Mo Cox has to step it up. He needs a bounce back year for the sake of his job, for the sake of the run game, right? We all remember how crucial Jack Doyle was to the run game because of his blocking, and Mo Cox's blocking as the number 2. So he needs to step it up, not just because, and I always look at it as that I'm just a big, what is the production versus what is the investment? That's I guess that's how I look at it. And
right,
and that everybody looks at it very differently, but that's how I look at it. What are you being invested in? And you're making more than everybody else in the room, but you're also doing a lot less than, if this year goes the way we might think, is doing less than Jelani Woods, doing less than Kylan Granson, probably going to do more than Will Mallory and Drew Ogletree. But what about Farrell Brown? Is he going to come in and take Mo's spot? I mean, the fact that he's the vet in that room, he's the leader in that room. He's been the guy that's been here since the beginning. So he was there with Jack Doyle, Eric Ebron back in 2018. Remember that? Like, he was there, and now he's here heading into 2023. He's got to step it up as a leader, as in production, blocking. If anything, if you're a great blocker, I really don't care how many catches and receiving yards you have. If you are a good blocker, I could care less.
Yeah, there's a spot for you for sure.
Yeah, there's a spot for you. That's my take on Mo, because you need a blocking tight end, and I think he can be that. He's still got that because he's shown it.
Yeah, it's just getting it consistently, and that's really always kind of been his problem. It's like I said, you've seen the flashes, but you just haven't seen the consistency. So he's probably the guy on this list that we've talked about that, to me, is in the biggest competition because of how loaded that tight end room is right now, as far as how many guys they've brought in. He's really going to have to show that he's made some improvement, and he's able to come out and compete at a high level consistently. And if not, then he could be a cut candidate, whereas these other guys, I think their spot on the roster is pretty solidified at the moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, we're all looking forward to Jelani Woods and what he can do this year. Kylan Granson, we probably got to wait a couple years for Will Mallory and see what he can do. But, hey, you never know. They do have a metric of drafting guys, and maybe he gets a fast track to some playing time next year in 2024. So let's move on to our last candidate here. I think this one maybe some fans were, thinking, well, when is this guy going to come up? We were saving him for last. Kenny Moore, the second. A guy who is returning in a system that Gus Bradley and Ron Miles really tried, and they just couldn't find a spot for him. They really could not find a way to use him because Gus Bradley is old school. He is an established defensive coach. He's not changing his scheme. He's got credibility, and he's going to run it. And he does. I'm not going to say, well, I wouldn't say he's not going to change his scheme because in this type of defense, he was even open with it about the things that he would change. But with Kenny Moore, man, you even saw it. Like, he was in one position, he was in the other position. Like, there was confusion. He was out of touch. He wasn't making plays. This is a guy who needs it because he's entering a contract year. We all remember about, the stuff that he was talking about last year heading into training camp. Oh, I need to be paid. I want a contract extension. And then it comes out, ends 2021 badly, has a very questionable 2022, and now coming into a contract year, he needs a bounce back year basically because he's the leader in the corner room now. He's the vet in the corner. Technically, he's the vet in the secondary, really, because Rodney McLeod is gone. So you're the vet, and you need to perform. I mean, this is one thing that I heard from Shannon Sharp the other day, and it really spoke to me when we were sitting down thinking about these guys. And when it came to Kenny Moore, he can sit up there and be encouraging, get guys back on their feet, but you got to go out there and perform. You got to. Rodney McLeod did that so nicely. And the quote that I heard was Shannon Sharp said his grandfather told him, "Boy, I see better than I hear." And that is something that made me think of Kenny Moore immediately. You can be a leader, but you got to step it up on the field. You got to play better on the field. And I'm hoping with a off season in touch, Gus Bradley, Ron Miles returning, they know what Kenny Moore is. They see him up close and personal instead of just saying, okay, we're going to scout him for this game. No, he's your player now. You got a full season. You're getting into an off season. How are they going to use him? I think it's got to be a bounce back for Kenny Moore, honestly, man, because he is going to be the vet in that room. You're bringing in 3 rookies. You got Isaiah Rodgers, but also you still got a young, unproven guy in Dallas Flowers, who was a special teams guy for you last year. So you're really young, really inexperienced. Kenny Moore definitely has a lot on his shoulders in 2023.
Yeah, for sure, man. And he's a guy, like you said, he just kind of ended 2021 badly. That transition to 2022, it seems like, he was the guy that everybody was saying is like, well, he got the Pro Bowl, and then it's just kind of after that, everything just fell apart. Like he was just kind of in it to get that individual award, and then after he got that, it just kind of all went downhill. So I think that was a kind of a lesson learned, and another guy that really was kind of questioning what his place on this team moving forward was, and then they go out, they have a conversation with Gus Bradley and Kenny Moore about what his role is moving forward. I think there was a misunderstanding last year of like kind of what he brought to the table. And because he's not that guy you can just throw out on the outside and he's just going to be that shutdown corner. He's more of like a chess piece, like where you can line him up, especially like blitzing, attacking the ball, attacking the line of scrimmage. He makes plays, and we didn't really see that last year. So I think they have a better plan for him moving forward based on everything that I've heard, based on what they've said. There's a little bit more of a different way they're going to be using him as opposed to what they used him last year. So you will kind of see a little bit of a change in Gus Bradley and how he utilizes Kenny Moore moving forward. And I think that's going to be a benefit to both the player and to the team. And because we know at his best, man, we know Kenny Moore can be one of the best players in the secondary in the NFL, not just, not just like an impact player. I mean, we're talking about legit one of the best players in the secondary in football, and we know what kind of impact he can make. So whenever you can utilize him correctly, have him feel more comfortable in this defense, have him really kind of get past his struggles that he dealt with. And I know there were some pieces that came out last year about how difficult it was, mentally for him as well. So that's another guy that he seemed to have some struggles mentally. And I think he's gotten past those. We definitely hope that because, you know, as I wear my bracelet here, kicking the stigma, as we know, like mental health, like it's such a crucial thing. So, um, being able to be in a good place mentally could just open so many doors for guys, and it's really one of the biggest not really selling points, but it's one of the biggest indicators of success and stuff like that. Is if you're good mentally, you look good, you feel good, perform good, all that kind of good stuff. So, I think him moving forward, I think we'll see more of the Kenny Moore of old, than especially in contract years too. Like guys in contract years, they always tend to seem to play a little bit better than they did the years
Might
whenever
be
they
a
had.
little bit motivation behind it.
Yeah. So, um, I think that's going to play a good role as well in his ascent. So I'm expecting a lot of these guys to have bounce back seasons. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff, the energizing nature that Shane Steichen and some of these other position coaches bring. Having finally a quarterback, you've selected a quarterback um, that you expect to be the future. And I just think like not having to go through that carousel every single year. Now, you have the guy moving forward that you're expecting to be that guy. And that's a big thing for a roster, man. Like that is like what they've dealt with really since Andrew Luck retired with new guys every single year. Like it really takes its toll on the locker room, not just an offense, but like just the team in general. It can really take its toll on a team. And so I think finally having the head coach and the accountability he brings, the preparation he brings, having another year with Gus Bradley, and then finally having that quarterback, I think things are set up well for this team moving forward.
Man, something I was told 4 years has been an emotional roller coaster on West 56th Street. An emotional roller coaster. I believe it. I believe it. I can't even imagine going through that much turnover at the most important position in football. The players have been professional about it. They haven't gone off script and going bashing out at the reporters or anything, but there have been some comments here and there let out by Michael Pittman, Marley Cox, and other guys like, hey, kind of get this thing situated. Let's get it figured out. Kind of calling out Chris Ballard a little bit. And look, I don't think Chris Ballard is above criticism from his own players. I mean, absolutely, you're up here preaching every single offseason about what you're gonna do and how you're gonna do it, and we can't rely on Paris Campbell being the number 2 or 3, and then 5 months later he's your number 2. So you can't really come up there and preach about that and not deliver on it. Just like what I said earlier about that quote from Shannon Sharp, boy, I see better than I hear. Actions speak louder than words. It's got to deliver.
Well,
now you got the kid.
It's a results-oriented business. And Jim Irsay has even said that. He's like, we like consistency and patience and, that all is a big thing with this team and with the locker room. And that does play a big role in a team. But at the end of the day, too, it's about the product you put out on the field. It's about winning and losing ball games. And we can talk about how great guys are analytically and how great, this guy performs this well on third down at this yards and this distance. And that's all great and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about winning and losing football games. And that's why these guys play. You play to win the game. Like you don't play to look good in the stat sheet and to look good on a chart. You play to win football games. So I'm probably gonna piss off a lot of people, the analytics, like that. But I mean, that's just the reality of it. That's just how you look at it. Whenever you are in a competitive sport like that.
Hey, look at Lovie Smith. He had the number 1 pick in hand, but he said, "Nah, I'm gonna go out with a win."
Yeah, you're always trying to win, and unless you've been in a locker room in a competitive sport, I mean, it's one of those things that I've been lucky enough to play, at a high level of sports, and with soccer and stuff, and I've been a part of those locker rooms, and I mean, it's about winning. Like some of the worst games some of the worst memories I have were games that I played individually great. I played great in, but I was so devastated because we lost the game. And
Yep.
what I did on it didn't matter. I don't care, There was one game in particular, we played it was the Tide American Cup. And so we were playing on that. We were going up against an undefeated team that hadn't been beaten the entire tournament. Um, and nobody had scored on them the entire tournament. Not a single goal led up. And this was I believe it was the semifinals. We were in semifinals. I scored a goal on them. The only goal they left in the entire tournament was the one that I scored. And we celebrated. It was fun. We lost the game, and I was devastated. And it wasn't about an individual performance. It was about, we didn't get the job done, and it ate me alive. And that's the way it is in competition. Is you don't care about the numbers, and you don't care about the analytics and all that stuff. You care about winning games, and you care about, getting the job done as a unit and priding yourself in that competition and going through that grind together. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just part of it. So, yeah, I don't think he's above criticism. I think he's done a lot of really good things.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of really questionable things, but at the end of the day, they have the ability now to be patient, to bring Anthony. I think everybody understands what the expectations are this year. This isn't necessarily. I mean, it's always going to be about winning and losing, but it's more about the future of where this team's headed, and I think that's really what you're looking forward. So, all these guys being bounce back candidates and having a bounce back year, being better individually and as a unit, especially that offensive line, I think that translates to on-field success. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see kind of how this all kind of plays out with these, guys we talked about as individuals and as a unit.
Yeah, definitely, dude, and I agree. So, guys, with that has been an episode of the Blue Stable Podcast, man. Marcus, we still waiting on you to get back with us. Hope you up and obviously doing good, man. So, other than that, Landon, I don't think we have anything else. Again, OTAs have started. Mandatory mini camp is June 13th through the 15th. Training camp coming soon. Since the Colts have a new head coach, they will start a week earlier than every other franchise. So that's the beautiful thing about it. More practice, more football, more coverage, man. You already know what is going on. So, Landon, man, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, I will. Hopefully, as long as everything is figured out by then. Hopefully, we have a plan in place. Other than that, guys, thank you again. If you are watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other listening platform, please make sure you give us a 5-star review. Make sure you always stay connected with the Blue Stable. We really appreciate it. And make sure you're following the Blue Stable account on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as well. So, Landon, man, this has been a pleasure. We'll see you next week. Marcus, hopefully you come back. Guys, come see us back next week. Hope you enjoyed the show. See you.